Is it, you guys prefer this microphone up in the back or a little better? Okay. Yes. Well, thanks for having me. Good to be back. Good job, ladies. That's exciting. It's amazing to me how education and the distribution of education has changed so much. And we really need to encourage and do all sorts of things like this. Any of you who have kids or grandkids, we sit with them with their tablets and do things that you can't even imagine and that didn't exist even 10 years ago. Know that the true potential in our society, if not worldwide, but in our society, is to embrace that change and use technology and educate kids, especially in the ways that make sense to them, because not all kids are alike. I am Stapleton. I'm running for Congress, and it's good to be back. I've been here probably 3 or 4 times over the last decade. I guess it's more than that now. I was first elected in 2000, so I'm one of the old guys. I haven't been in the legislature for 7 years. I don't recognize them, and they don't recognize me. I grew up right up the street in Great Falls, and graduated from Great Falls High School in 1986. I joined the Navy. I was nominated to the United States Naval Academy, where I earned an engineering degree, later a master's degree, and then was commissioned as a United States Naval officer. I drove aircraft carriers and Aegis cruisers for a living after deploying overseas. I returned back to Montana, where I've been a small businessman for 17 years and a former state senate minority leader for Billings. I married my high school sweetheart. We have, Terry and I have 4 kids, one now at the U in Missoula, ages 19, 15, 13, and 11. And Terry and I started dating, as I said, at Great Falls High School 30 years ago. We were 16 years old. So, 30 years ago, the greatest threat to the United States was the Soviet Union. Remember that? Gorbachev, communism, the Cold War, the movie Top Gun. In fact, my class at the U.S. Naval Academy was called the Top Gun class because we were the largest class ever to apply to Annapolis, following that blockbuster movie in the mid-1980s with Tom Cruise. But things change, right? Although current recent news that over in Russia and Ukraine, maybe not so much, but the threat really isn't Russia or the Soviet Union anymore, right? But the threats never really go away. They just sort of change from Russia to maybe perhaps China. I believe the greatest threat to America's national security now is our $17 trillion in debt. I'm running for Congress because I'm afraid, I'm worried that our debt to nations like China threaten our economy, our national security. While they steal our technology, our jobs, Barack Obama and the Congress are racking up billions of dollars in debt to countries like China, which use that to strengthen their economy, strengthen their military. As a Navy veteran, I took an oath to defend our country, and I'm running for Congress to restore America's greatness. But back in D.C., President Obama, the D.C. Democrats don't get it. They are voting to increase our national debt. Republicans are voting to stop it, to lower it. And I realize not everybody in here votes the Republican ticket. But the Democrats in Washington, D.C. are costing us millions of jobs. Obamacare, 2 million jobs are lost. The Republicans are trying to grow the economy, to reduce the regulation, to expand our economy. The Democrats in Washington, D.C. are pushing through this healthcare overhaul, Obamacare. The Republicans are trying to stop it. The Democrats are continually voting to take away many of the freedoms that make our Constitution, our sovereign republic, unique, and turn us more into a one global economy, one world order. The Republicans are trying to stop it. In fact, the only thing standing between us, our $17 trillion in debt and getting worse, the only thing standing between us and a historic economic collapse that we haven't seen, except in the likes of Europe, is the Republican-held House of Congress. I understand the threat. I'm the proven conservative leader who can stop it. There are, in this contested primary, there's several one of the things that's instructive, there's the 4 of us who are running are all state senators. The first thing that state senators do after they're elected is get together and choose a leader. And the reason why I was chosen is because I understood how to represent us statewide, the many voices in Helena. I had the courage and the integrity. I was willing to compromise on policy, but not on our conservative principles. And I never confused our friends with our opponents. I stood up to Brian Schweitzer, his administration. I'll stand up against President Obama and his liberal allies in Washington, D.C. So as we head into the primary season, and there's choices, I believe that Montana needs a strong, in this open congressional seat, a strong leader with the background and the experience to stand up to what's going on in Washington, D.C., because we just cannot continue on in this manner. Now, I don't have any notions that a freshman congressman can get their way. You hear the expression, one of 435 people. But my experience is that people who have ideas and people who have courage and vision have a way very quickly of emerging in doing things. I came literally, when I came to Helena in the state senate 14 years ago, within 1 year I was put into leadership. We had a battlefield promotion. Our majority whip actually died, and I was put there and never left leadership in the next 7 years. Those of you, this town tends to follow the legislature, know that's very unique. Almost always when you're in leadership, you get thrown out after 2 or 4 years with the next coup. The legislature loves coups. One of the reasons why I was there until the day I left is because I always try to do things for the right reasons, and I try to represent the will of the people that we represent. And I think if those of you who have traveled this great state know that people out in the Bakken have a very different view of government than the people in the Northwest or the people in Butte or my hometown of Great Falls. But we're all Montanans, and we only have one voice. We only have one vote in Congress. But what are some things that we could do? And then I'll certainly open up a little bit and listen to your questions, because I enjoy the give and take. And this town tends to really have a good sense of things that you wish. A lot of the government programs have centers in this town. What would I do differently? What do I think? One, I think it was a mistake, for example, that Barack Obama cut the space shuttle program. I think we should be going the other direction. As a former military officer, someone who understands history, who controls the skies controls battlefields. Who controls space controls the future. We should not cede our space. We should not cede the satellites or exploration or space programs to other countries. We should not cede that to corporations. Corporations are not accountable to the public in the way that national governments are. And so I think that, if I'm a congressman, I'm going to be someone who encourages that we reverse the course of action that Barack Obama took a couple years ago when he scrapped our shuttle program. I think we should decrease the number of kids on food stamps and decrease the number of kids with childhood obesity. Think about the correlation. Think about how we can get there. They're not directly correlated, but I think there's something there. I think we need to get healthier kids. I think we need to better get it. There's so many things related, but the reality is we're at historically high levels in both. We can do better. Let's get healthier food to our kids at a younger age. Let's get fewer kids with the expectation that they're going to spend their lives dependent on government. We talked about the educational system. I think you guys, we couldn't have seen it any better. Distribution systems of education aren't the same for everybody. We need to continue to invest in our education, our different distribution systems. They all work, not any one works for any one kid. National energy policy. I was the lead sponsor of the Otter Creek coal bills a decade ago as a way to pay for our educational system here in Montana. I came and went, and not a piece of that coal has moved yet. That's absurd, it's crazy. Coal is going to power our nation for the next 50 years or not, whether you like it or not. Montana can be at the forefront. We really should be one of the top 10 states of the 50 because of our natural resources, our coal, our oil, our gas, our agriculture. We need to get back to the economic development, which could put us near the top. In the mid-1970s, as you know, our per capita job, income per job, was 18th in the country, 18th out of 50 states. Over the next 30 years, we dropped to 47. We can do so much better, and part of that has to do with the development of our natural resources. I would support us having some sort of national energy plan. I think we need to move into a period of time where we have, I would almost call it a season of introspection as a country. Not quite a penalty box like in hockey, but close. The $17 trillion in debt we racked up means that we really need to pay attention to our own problems for a while. We're giving so much money to so many other countries in the world. We're the most generous country in the history of the world. We give aid to nations that don't even like us. We need to pull back a little bit. Let's reduce our debt. I would support reducing our debt to $10 trillion from the current $17 trillion. I'd support getting that down to $10 trillion in the next 10 years. And part of that will be, let's get our own national energy policy. Let's develop our own natural resources, take care of our own. And then lastly, I guess I would say, let's get serious about illegal immigration. If I go to Washington, D.C., it's really difficult. If you've been someone who's made laws and who tries to think of yourself as a statesman and a citizen of a nation of laws, it's really difficult to be part of a vast nation that chooses not to enforce laws. If they're not enforceable, then get rid of them. If they need to be changed, then change them. But if a government will not enforce its own laws, what's next? Right now you might agree with it, but the next time it may not be something you do agree with. So we really need to get our arms around on that. And lastly, I guess, I wish, let's not be so politically correct. We live in such a divided time now. It's amazing to me as I travel around the state, people are so quickly offended. People are stifled in saying, we should disagree, we should debate. I remember my years in the state Senate. I served 6 years across the aisle from John Tester. He was the counterpart. We both flipped. We were majorities, we were minorities. Mike Cooney, Carol Williams. We fought like tigers, but we were friendly. I think that we need the interaction. We're in very difficult times. You asked me, what's the mood of the electorate out there? People are really divided. But what's amazing is that nobody talks to each other because we have all chosen to get our information out the way we like. We got our little iPhones, we plug into our own news, we talk to our own friends, and so we don't cross-pollinate or disagree. And we've learned, we've kind of forgotten the art of disagreeing. But to solve some of these hard issues, whether it's getting rid of the debt, whether it's curbing entitlement spending, whether it's curbing illegal immigration, whether it's a national Obamacare, how do we get to solve the problems with Obamacare? We can agree on that people with pre-existing conditions should be covered. And how can we do that without destroying 2 million jobs and doing something such a debacle as what we've seen if we can't disagree and talk and people not get upset after one sentence of disagreement? So I'm hopeful that we can get there. I'd like to bring that type of personality. I take on the biggest issues. Those of you who know, I took on the Department of Revenue as a freshman, demanded that they get rid of their computer system points. When I did that, I was an army of one. I took on my own party and virtually had no support doing that. In the beginning, I had no support. In the end, unanimous support in the Senate, 50-0 vote, but it took 2.5 years. I carried the Otter Creek coal bills. I tried to create a medical school. 10 years ago, I had a bill to create a medical school in Montana. It was killed by the Senate Democrats. We talked about the shortage of physicians. 10 years later, we have 50,000 too few physicians across America. We have issues, but I'd like to take on those big issues. I'd like your support to be our congressman, and I'd love to hear your questions and thoughts, and if you've got ideas or things that you think would make our state better, or would be something that would be valuable to me, I'd love to hear it.
Question. Anybody have a question? Go.
I agree that the most significant problem we face is our debt. Everything's going to disappear if we continue on the track that we are. You want to go from 17 trillion to 10 trillion. How do we get there?
I think a great question. Everybody hear it? How do you go from 17 trillion to 10 trillion? And where is 10 trillion? Did I just pull it out of my hat? Yeah. The reality is it's directional. So the first part of that is, can we just agree that the momentum, it's unacceptable to go from 17 to 18 to 19 to 20 trillion. And if that sounds self-evident, it is, because 2/3 of across the state, if you ask people, they're like, yeah, we too much debt, everybody agrees. But when it comes right down to the vote, everything changes. And I blame the media a little bit for this, and the demagoguery of our president on this, because he'll step back, and his famous line is, I am not going to negotiate with the Congress, which refuses to pay for the charges it's incurred, which is just language for the automatic increases and cost of living increases make things get more and more and more expensive. And since President Obama didn't put forward a budget for 4 years, what was going to happen? It was automatic, but nobody owns it. The point is, the next time the debt ceiling fight comes up, I just want you to know, I don't support increasing the debt ceiling. I think we need to deal with it. I think we need to go the other direction. The amount of debt now that our nation has, $54,000 to every single man, woman, child. That is what all you guys owe. That's your share of the national debt. It's a crime. And so I think entitlement spending has to be part of it. The growth of the economy has to be an enormous part of it. We need to unleash our economy. We need entrepreneurs. I would love to, if I had the chance. There's not a lot of political incentive in it for me, at least currently on the Native American reservations, but I would love to introduce the idea of an entrepreneur to our 7 Native American reservations. Get the idea of entrepreneurialism in these reservation systems that haven't worked economically. Unleash the American economy, use our innovation. But I think part of it has to be austerity. I think we need to step back. We don't need to do it willy-nilly. I don't think we do it across the board. I think we do it smartly. There are things that we still need to continue to invest in. But to suggest that, just 6 or 8 years ago, our national debt was 6 or 8 trillion? It's doubled in 5 or 6 years. It's doubled. We can do better than that.
Your answer strikes me as very vague. You're running for Congress. You said you want to go from 17 to 10. The Simpson Bowl report points out that 80% of the projected increased deficit is Medicare, Social Security, and military. What specifically do you propose in those big areas of the federal budget?
It's not vague. In fact, what I would say to you is that's the classic dig entrenchment debt from the left and the right that everybody just says we can't do anything. If giving you a number of 10 trillion isn't as specific as can be, or saying that we need to go directionally the other way isn't specific, then I'd suggest you ask any other candidate running, because they're not talking. What I'm saying is, I sat there in 2003, right here in this town, and we rolled back the budget from 2003 to 2001, which was really hard to do, and I was willing to do it. I'd be willing to do something like that. I'm a congressman, I'm a freshman. If I'm elected, I don't get to call those shots. What I've said is I will support that. I will be part of that. I don't get to write the budget. I don't get to be, I have no notions that I have more power than I would, but I would be someone that would support that, and I would not support increasing the debt.
Go.
If we were to make a chart for you, and between 1 and 10, 1 being extremely liberal and 10 being extremely conservative, where would you be?
I don't know. I think you'll have to label me. I think you could look at my voting record for 8 years and know that I have a very conservative record. Probably a Chamber of Commerce 96 lifetime rating, so whatever that,
Would you consider yourself a debater?
A think that's a derogatory term myself, so.
I'm sorry, would you consider yourself?
You don't have to apologize, I'm just saying that teabagger is by all definitions a derogatory term.
Well, I understand.
I consider myself a Republican, that's all, the single label I ever needed. If you want to call me a conservative, most certainly my record is conservative. But I think that for someone to be able to represent 1 million people in Montana, I'm a proud Republican, it's the party of Lincoln, it's the party of Reagan, you know, I want to appeal to the social conservatives, to the fiscal conservatives, to the constitutional conservatives, the independents, the libertarians. Those are all people that I consider that I have 90% in common with. So you can label me, I don't mind that, but I am trying to represent 70% of our state.
What's your solution to the healthcare problem?
I think that Obamacare, as difficult as it is, I almost think of the term metastasized. It's been the law of the land now for 4 years and it's come this way. The rollout, the computer problems are significant. In fact, the computer problems almost reminded me of the points problem from a decade ago. But just to put it in context, President Obama claimed that he had 4 million people sign up. You all see that? That was his big thing. He kept saying 4 million, 4 million. And 6 million people have been kicked, have lost their health insurance. So we've netted negative 2 million. Keep in mind, in 2008, the reason why we did this was to reduce the number of uninsureds from 60 million in America to 30 million. To go from 60 to 30. And in fact, all we've done now has gone from 60 to 62 million. So it hasn't worked. That being said, it wasn't a perfect healthcare system before Obamacare. We know that. There were things that were wrong with it. I would like to focus on what the group policies already did. For 20 years, group policies have already made it illegal to exclude people because of pre-existing conditions. That's a good move. That was something that we could all agree on. So I think we start on that. I would like to see us go back. I would like us to see us repeal what isn't working and go with the market-based. I like the employer-based sponsored programs. People like their doctors. This is creating chaos in the healthcare system. People are going from, and imagine this, imagine the world we're living in as we should be getting more and more educated. America's competitive advantage is education and innovation. We're going to where people are seeing lesser care. They're not seeing doctors now, they're seeing people with lesser qualifications. They're losing Cadillac plans, maybe unions, corporations which had nice plans. They're actually losing those. We're going the other way. So I like, you know, it wasn't perfect before, but it was better than it was before. And the chaos and the additional, the $1 trillion in debt and the 2 million job losses are really unfriendly. Because it's straddling, this is the generation that's really getting hurt. The kids, the 18 to 25 to 30-year-olds, the American dream is not there for them the way that it is for most of the people that are here in this room.
You keep repeating the 2 million job loss. Where are those data from?
CBO,
I don't think so.
Congressional Budget Office.
I don't think so. I think it's more like 500,000.
500,000 job losses was associated with the minimum wage increase.
But you keep using the 2 million figure and there's no basis for that, sir.
Congressional Budget Office.
I don't think so.
Okay, you said that. It's, you know, I read it in multiple sources of the media.
I have a question about Secretary of Defense Hagel has proposed a reduction, a shrinking of the military force. And concomitant with that, according to the latest reports I've heard, is that the Pentagon budget will still increase. As a former military officer and as a conservative Republican, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I do think that the natural ebb and flow of force size, it makes sense to reduce it if we're not going to be in wars, and we shouldn't be in wars, unless it's absolutely necessary. So I don't mind the manpower downsizing. We're weary. We shouldn't be over in some of these places, and so I don't have any issue with that. But I think that the fact, what I read about it is there's very little support for that in Congress. I said it earlier, the threat really never goes away. We have to maintain a baseline of security and military might historically, at least coming out of World War II, we had a strategy, I don't know the name of it, but essentially said that we could fight 2 wars at one time. That was the overlying premise, and that was how we chose how many carrier groups and how many Army divisions and Marine Corps. That will evolve over time, as it should. You know, thank goodness that the days of these massive Army, you know, beach landings and stuff those days are gone in many ways forever. We have you know, drones, and we can get into this, whether or not that's all good. But I think we need to downsize. I don't think we need to reduce our imprint, though. I think that we need the strength. I don't think we need, for example, the Malmstrom argument. Strategic deterrence doesn't ever change. Maybe the threat is no longer the Soviet Union, maybe it's, you know, somewhere else in the world, but we need to keep that capability. So I would not be supportive of reducing what I would consider a minimum threat, but it may or may not be attached directly to the number of troops, because troop size isn't necessarily correlated 100% with our ability to fight wars. Not anymore. Yeah.
There are many in the Republican Party who feel very strongly about adherence to traditional conservative values as we approach these elections. However, to win, you need to win in the center. And if you don't win elections, you can't impact anything. So what would your strategy be?
Part of it is easy in the way I answer these questions, or don't answer them. I mean, it's better to take heat from somebody saying you don't answer a question about being a teabagger and just take the high road than to concede that you're going to defend a radical part of any political party, because you can't, especially in Montana. What I know is almost everybody calls himself independent. And whether it's with a capital I, being a party, or just a lowercase I, which I tend to think it is, people are pretty smart, but they're also, you know, they're kind of fed up. The mood out there is a little growly. And I recognize as a politician, you add fuel to that. It's not a perfect system. If I don't file for office, 90% of the people in my neighborhood think, oh, he's a great guy, he mows his yard, the kids are great, you know, always pick up our news. But you file for office and 50% of your neighbors don't like you. I get that. And you say things that annoy people. But the two-party system is here. And so the Republicans, we've had a little difficulty over the last 10 years. I pushed back on a couple people. And the reason why is 10 years ago when I ran, it was okay just to be a Republican. You didn't have to give a qualifier. I didn't have to say, I'm a constitutional conservative. I'm a member of the Tea Party. You know, I'm a liberty guy. You were just a Republican, and I think we need to get back to that. You know, this is a very proud party. We have a heritage rooted in, historically, we were there at the most important times, whether it was in 1865 or whether it was in the 80s or after World War II. I mean, we have a lot to stand on, and that which shares us across all of our different groups who vote Republicans, including independents, is fiscal conservatism, the embracement of our private sector to solve the majority of our problems, being compassionate about those who are vulnerable in our society. I think that's a shared universal benefit. But for the most part, the last part, which is more of a Montana thing, is that we're kind of a lot of libertarians compared to other states in the country. Everybody just kind of wants to be left alone, more so than in most parts of the state. And I get that, and I can represent that. No, I just, I realize, you know, this is a broad group here, and you said it. If you don't win, you don't get to lead. It's win or go home. So I am in a Republican primary, so my message is aimed right now to the people who vote that Republican ticket. It doesn't mean that, you know, I don't look forward to the fall. In the recent polling, I'm leading in the polls across the field, both Republicans and Democrats, so I'm grateful for that and hopeful. So keep me in your prayers. If you got other thoughts, questions, I'll stick around. You can find us on social media. You can Twitter, we tweet, we use Facebook, all of those things. But I do look forward, and if I am elected as your congressman, I look forward to doing things for the right reasons and putting Montana in the map in Washington, D.C., even if I'm only one of 435. So thanks for having me today.
next week, Dean Faulkner, who's on the